So in sports or games, there are two main aspects to them. There's the technical aspect, and then there's the mental aspect. For games like chess, the mental aspect is way high, or has a much higher skill ceiling. For sports games such as swimming or archery, the technical ceiling is the one that is much higher. For video games, this requires mainly a mix of both of them. But in this video, I want to focus on a certain aspect of the mental game, specifically the game sense. Now, how I want to describe the game sense is in two different ways. One way is sort of your spidey sense. Your spidey sense pretty much tells you that, hey, in this situation that you're currently in, something isn't right. Maybe you think there might be someone hiding somewhere behind some cover waiting to come out and get you, so you pre-fire over that way. Or maybe the person that you were engaging has suddenly disengaged. Either they have their special ready, or maybe they're wanting to bait you over to where they are. Maybe there's like a second person over there to help them if you take the bait. And so that's your sort of spidey sense telling you that, hey, something isn't right in this situation. The other kind is sort of seeing the future. Now, of course, if I told you that top players can see the future, you certainly wouldn't believe me. However, it is a fact that all humans have certain habits, whether it's what you buy at the grocery store or what you do in a game. Now, these habits, they can be exploited between what routes the player likes to take, how the player likes to push or defend an objective, or what they do when they panic. All of the options that a player does can sort of be picked up on, and you tend to do the same actions in a row. So someone can pick up on that and see, hey, you did this the past 2 times, you're probably going to do it a third time. Now, with me explaining that, let's get into how you're going to improve your game sense, what you need to know to improve it. So these game sense things are, since I've recently gone all the way in Splatoon from C- rank all the way up to S, I've gotten to experience again all of the game sense mistakes that people make at those lower ranks. Before I go into game sense, I want to emphasize that you should be comfortable in the tech that you're going to use before you practice your mental game. The reason for this is that if you're not comfortable with whatever tech you're using before you practice your mental game, you're going to be thinking about the tech as opposed to thinking about improving your mental game. So just make sure that you're comfortable with some of the basic stuff that you are planning on using, such as don't use completely complex combos if you're trying to practice your mental game, because then you're thinking about your complex combo and not the mental game. But let's get into it. The first thing that I want to talk about is the map, or the stage. Now, you want to know the map or the stage, you need to know what your effective range is on each map, where the cover is, maybe playing a game that has health packs or whatever. You want to know all these things. Knowing exactly where, in Splatoon for example, where the cover is, where you can right peek, will give you a much better advantage against the other person just standing out in the open. The other important aspects that you want to identify in the map may be where a chokehold is, and a chokehold is where your team basically has 1 or 2 options where they need to push through some narrow passageway to push the objective. In Splatoon, the best example of a choke is in Kelp Dome, when the tower's around the 20-point mark or so, that area between your tree in the garden and your spawn. That right there is a choke, because both teams either have to come through that lower part on the left, or they have to come through the part on the grate. And neither of those are really good parts to come through, and so tower control on Kelp actually sort of deadlocks at that point between whoever can happen to get the most lucky picks off, or whoever can use the most crazy special will win past that choke. The other thing you want to know about the maps is, in Splatoon, it's actually important to know where good low ground places are. In other shooter games, low ground is by no means an advantage. However, in Splatoon, low ground is an advantage. For example, in Blackbelly, the low ground in Blackbelly in front of your spawn, if you've ever been spawn camped, it's pretty darn hard to get someone who is spawn camping you. That person just has like so much cover that they can weave around, and you're just sort of like up there in the open, and what are you going to do? In Splatoon, there's also, of course, high ground advantage, and in other shooters, high ground is an advantage. Now, high ground is an advantage because you can see all of where the enemy is, but you can also step backwards, and suddenly the enemy can't shoot you anymore. We can use Blackbelly again, and we can use that top mid area between the 2 zones as the high grounds, the highest place in Blackbelly. is a great place for snipers or for shooters, because you can see all of the different routes that people coming from enemy spawn can take to get into mid. Or if someone is directly below you, if you're a shooter, you have such a huge advantage over them that you can just jump down, shoot them, or not even jump down. Maybe they're climbing up the wall and you can just shoot them out of the wall, which happens a lot on Flounder or Moray. So those are the things with the map that you want to know. Now the next thing you want to know are the routes. The routes are not just all the different ways you can get to mid. The routes are the different ways you can get to the objective, different ways you can get to the mid, and the ways that people will most likely take to get there. For splat zones, maybe there's about 3 routes for every map to get into the zone, but if you're on tower control, the routes that you would take to get to the tower change depending on how close the tower is to the enemy goal, how close the tower is to your goal, and so on. Now, knowing these routes, you can predict where the enemy is going to want to go, where they might feel that they need more members, or where they might need to go to push the objective. Predicting where the enemy is going to go, you can either take that portion of the map, or you can start pre-firing into the route, and you might get someone, or you might prevent someone or deter someone from wanting to go down that route. Now in Splatoon, of course, there is also a very clear indicator of where you can and cannot go, and that is the map control, or the ink on the map. You can stand in your ink, you're going to have a bad time in the enemy ink. And looking at that, you can determine how close to the enemy ink you want to stand, depending on what weapons the enemy has. Or if you're playing and suddenly you see a splotch of enemy ink where you don't remember enemy ink being, you can start to have your spidey sense tingling that, hey, there's probably an enemy looking to come down this way, or there's an enemy already in this way. Maybe you're on Walleye and you have the zone, the enemy team's coming back trying to fight. You notice there's ink on the right side, and you look down and you see like the entire right hallway leading up to your spawn is inked, and you should have a pretty good indication by now that someone is flanking you. Now, let's say this person flanks you one time, works pretty well, flanks you a second time and it works pretty well. By now you should realize that, hey, this person has flanked 2 times already. So you can sort of time it out where you see the ink on the right, you just turn around, fire off a shot, and bam, you've killed the person that's flanking for a 3rd time. And that's the sort of game sense that you want to get into, is picking up on the habits and picking up on where things simply aren't right. And that's using both the spidey sense and the future prediction that that person's going to flank again to be able to kill him. Now, another important aspect of game sense is the enemy comp. At the start of the game, you can see your comp, and then you can see the enemy comp, what they're running. Now, one of the things that people usually get surprised by in lower ranks is, oh, I didn't know there was a sniper there. Oh, I didn't know there was a blaster or a roller there. Sometimes you'll get surprised by it. Maybe they do something unexpected. But most of the time you should realize, hey, the sniper surprised me when they were standing on snipe. But why am I getting surprised if the sniper is on snipe, or the sniper's on high ground? I should expect the sniper to be on high ground. So by looking at the enemy comp, I can sort of predict that, hey, the blaster is going to want to go low beneath the grates, or the rollers are going to want to shark around, or the sniper wants to take the high ground. And if I know the sniper wants to take the high ground, I can usually go over to, let's say the match starts, I go immediately over to snipe, and I start shooting over there, and I get a kill, and guess what? It's the sniper who was trying to go over to snipe, and he got killed because you knew the sniper was going to go there. You knew the sniper wanted to take the high ground, so you stopped him from taking the high ground initially. And that's sort of on the enemy comp. What you need to know is play around with a few weapons, or maybe look at the enemies to determine where they like to go. If you're still unsure where certain weapons go, then you can look at top players or pro players of whatever game it is, and you can see where they like to stand, what parts of the map they feel is important to control. Because certain maps have different important aspects that they want to control, whether it's the high ground, or whether it's a certain choke, or whatnot. And these things you should look at, and you should look at their positioning to figure out, hey, this person is standing here, which means they're using my weapon, so I want to stand there. Or, hey, that person is standing there, I usually have a trouble with that person's weapon, so I should expect that when I'm fighting that weapon, that an enemy is going to be standing there. or that if I have that weapon on my team, I want to get that weapon into that position because it is a strong position. And helping your teammates get into the positions that they want and understanding what positions that they want to play is also important. Getting your teammates into good positions will much greater help you win the game. Understanding what positions that your teammates want to play, even if you can't talk to them, just understanding, hey, this person wants to go here, it looks like they're trying to get here, I'm going to help them go here. And once I help them go here, they're going to start wrecking house. Now, in Splatoon specifically, one thing that is also affecting the game sense is the enemy gear. The enemy gear is pretty important because, let's say, a person pops a Kraken, and that Kraken lasts for 10 seconds. You realize, hey, this person has all special duration. That's very important for you to know, because those extra 3 seconds of special that the person has, maybe extra damage, or respawn stealth jump is one of the biggest offenders in tower control. Those things are going to affect how you want to play the match, or how you want to approach one specific person. If you know the Luna Blaster on the enemy team has a lot of quick respawn, and maybe he has stealth jump, then you should know that, hey, the Luna is probably going to be really aggressive. Now, knowing that the Luna is going to be really aggressive, I can take a much more defensive stance, and I do not want to trade with Luna because he is going to come back much more quickly than I will, and he's also going to jump some unexpected location whenever I kill him or whenever I trade with him. That's one of the things that you have to keep in mind, is what each of the gear the enemy is running, so you know to avoid certain people when they're doing their special, or you know to back up against some person preemptively because you know they're going to be aggressive. Or you know if the person has a lot of defense, they also might go very aggressive because they know they're not going to die as quickly as someone else. Or if someone's wearing a lot of defense, maybe you know you need to get an extra shot off with your weapon, so you have to be prepared for that. One other thing that game sense that I've been talking about these specials a lot, and some games you can't tell if a person has their special, such as Overwatch, you can't tell if someone has their ultimate, aside from figuring out that, hey, I'm this character, the enemy team has the same character, I have my ultimate, so chances are the enemy on the other team has their ultimate. But in Splatoon, you can tell if someone has their special because they will have the glowing hair. They'll go Super Saiyan. When a person has the glowing hair, you should recognize that based on what their weapon is, they're going to react differently. If they have an Inksuka, they might want to try to pull back and use it. Or if they have a Kraken, you might see an E-leader like unexpectedly approach you. You're like, oh, why is this E-leader approaching me? That's so stupid. And then he pops a Kraken on you. And you realize, oh, I've just been duped. So what you need to realize is look at your enemy visually. Determine, hey, that person has their special. They're probably going to want to come at me, so I'm going to try to keep my distance, or keep the most effective distance that I can, even if it isn't the best. Such as maybe you want to get in on a blaster as close as you can. Maybe you're like a sort of long-range shooter, but you still want to get in on a blaster to kill them, but you also know the blaster has Kraken. Well, that sort of eliminates your option of getting close in on them, because then you know the blaster's going to pop Kraken and the Kraken's going to kill you. So you want to play differently whether you see the person has a special or if they don't. And you want them to get to use that special in what is essentially the worst way possible. The worst way possible of using a special is, of course, if you can force them to use it, but they can't do anything with it. They can't push the objective with it. They can't get any kills with it. If you do that, then you've successfully won that encounter. You've gotten them to use their special in a poor way. And these are all just a bunch of hodgepodge things that you need for game sense. The people in lower ranks, they won't necessarily look around them enough. They won't think that, hey, there's a 10 attack on the over in X position. I've gotten 2 kills over there. Maybe I'm over there with someone else. I've gotten 2 kills, but I haven't killed the 10 attack. They won't actively think all the time that I didn't kill the 10 attack. The 10 attack is still over here. Instead, you might get caught up in thinking, I've gotten 2 kills, let's push the objective, and then the 10 attack comes out of seemingly nowhere and kills you. When in reality, you should have realized, hey, I didn't kill this person that was over here. Where did he go? And your spidey sense should be tingling. Or you should realize that, hey, these people have gone down the right side twice now, and it's worked out pretty well. They're going to use it again to push the objective. Let's stop them in their tracks right then and there. Let's stop them before they can get in to get map control. Maybe there's a better position to stop them at. You need to recognize those sort of things between spidey sense and your future vision. Let's think about how do we practice this sort of thing. Well, one of the first ways is look at the enemy comps for each game that you start and predict where the enemy is going to go. Where do you think they're going to open first for each weapon? Sometimes there's sort of a 50-50 between, hey, this weapon likes to go here, or they like to go here. Both of them are good positions. But if you get into the habit of predicting where each weapon is going to go, see how often you're right. And if you're wrong, think about why that weapon chose to go where he did. Is he really just has no clue where to go, or is that actually a good position? And then you'll start to realize, hey, I'm no longer getting surprised by the snipers or the rollers, because I know the snipers are always going to go into these two positions, and I know how to look ahead of me to see that. Such as maybe you open on Museum. Snipers have two main ways to go. They can either go to the main spinner and start looking around mid, or to the left of mid to shoot people, or they can go immediately to their right. If it's the enemy, then it's your left. And they might shoot people who are trying to stay on your spinner plat, your main plat, before you fall into mid. They're trying to shoot around all your left area. And if you recognize that the sniper can go there, those two locations, then maybe you're a slosher or something that can hit high up. Instead of just going to the spinner, dropping down and get sniped, you can go to the spinner, you can look over or look down at your minimap on the gamepad. You can see, hey, there's an ink to the left. Chances are there's a sniper or someone else who has gone to the left and wants to kill me, and you can immediately go there. Or you can look left, you can see no one, and instead of just like putting your eyes to the ground, put your eyes over to where the enemy will come from. Because you know the enemy isn't going to be immediately in mid or immediately in your sort of area. So you can put your eyes to where the enemy might be, which is over to their plat. And for looking over to their plat, then you can see, hey, this enemy is on the left side, this enemy is in mid, this enemy is on the right side, and so on. Or this enemy is all the way up top just shooting ink down in a very safe location. And so if you're looking across to the plat, you will know this information as opposed to if you're just looking away or trying to ink some of the ground around you. So those are the main things that I wanted to talk about. Game sense. It's a bit difficult to talk about because when players do it, it's sort of like a second nature sort of thing. We're just thinking, hey, this person did this, so I'm expecting this. But maybe no one ever really tells you why they're expecting it. The reason is based on what the enemy has done previously, what the enemy gear is, where the objective is, where the enemy wants to go, and it's rather complex. But I hope this gets you thinking and figuring out where the enemy is going to go, where you can expect to see the enemy at. And knowing this will help you space much better on where you should go to stop an enemy push. And I hope this helps you understand why players are expecting sort of things to happen in the game that they do. Thank you for watching. If you have anything that you wanted me to talk about, perhaps this video would need some sort of follow-up as well, because it's rather on the more complex side. Game sense is certainly something that a very natural process that you sort of figure out, but one that you need to be actively thinking about as well. So if you have any questions or things that you want me to talk about, leave a comment below, and I'll see how I can fit it into video or my opinions on it. Thank you for watching.